When my husband told me, "My ex is coming to our Halloween party," I smiled. But inside, something in me went completely still. We'd been married for 7 years. 7 years of shared mornings, coffee on the porch, silly costumes, and neighborhood parties. And yet that night I realized maybe I didn't know the man I married as well as I thought. He said it so casually, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. "She's just an old friend, Emily. It's no big deal." But it was a big deal. Because the woman he was talking about, his ex, was the same one who broke his heart right before he met me. And now she was coming into my home. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I simply smiled, kissed him on the cheek, and said, "Sure, honey. Invite her." He had no idea what that smile really meant. He had no idea what was coming next. My name is Emily Parker, and I live in a small town just outside Portland, Oregon. Our home sits at the edge of a quiet cul-de-sac, where every porch has pumpkins lined up by the steps in October, and every family knows one another by name. My husband, Mark, works as a high school history teacher. He's the kind of man who still believes in handwritten notes and long drives on Sunday afternoons. I fell in love with him because he was steady, safe, the kind of person who always made me feel like I could lean on him. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. We had a little golden retriever named Milo, a kitchen always smelling of cinnamon coffee, and a small circle of friends who came over every Halloween for games and laughter. Halloween had always been our thing. We'd decorate the yard with string lights, hang paper bats from the trees, and host a small costume dinner. Last year, we dressed as a pair of detectives from an old movie. Him with his trench coat and me with a vintage hat and red lipstick. It was silly, but that's what made it special. It was ours. So when he mentioned inviting his ex, Lena, to this year's party, I thought at first he was joking. But when I looked up from my coffee that morning, his face was calm and serious. "She's moving back to town," he said. "She doesn't know many people here anymore." I thought it might be nice to include her. I didn't say much. I just nodded. He kissed my forehead before leaving for work, and I stood there watching the front door close. Something about that moment stayed with me all day, the casual tone in his voice, the way he said include her, as if I were supposed to understand. When I told my sister, Hannah, about it over the phone that afternoon, she nearly dropped her cup. "Emily, you're okay with that?" she asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I guess I just want to see what happens." Because part of me wanted to believe there was nothing to worry about. That Mark was just being kind, maybe nostalgic, maybe naive. But another part, the quieter, wiser part, told me that people rarely invite the past back into their lives unless something inside them still misses it. As the week went on, I watched him more closely. The way he checked his phone a little too often. The way he smiled at nothing while stirring his tea. And the way he said, "It'll be fun, Em. You'll like her." So I began to plan. Not out of anger, but out of curiosity. If he wanted to bring his past into our present, then I would let him. But this time I'd be ready. The days leading up to Halloween felt different. Our house was filled with decorations, orange lights, fake cobwebs, and the smell of caramel apples, but something in the air had changed. It wasn't excitement anymore. It was tension. Quiet, unspoken, and sitting right between us. Mark acted as if everything was fine. He hummed while carving pumpkins, sent group texts to friends about costumes, and played old Halloween playlists while cooking dinner. But I could tell he was nervous. His laughter was a little too loud, his movements a little too fast. One evening while setting the table, I caught him scrolling through his phone again. "Who's that?" I asked, keeping my tone soft. "Oh, just Lena," he said. "She wanted to know what time to come by." Just hearing her name out loud made my stomach tighten. I nodded, placing the silverware down one by one. "That's nice of you to keep her updated." He looked up, maybe sensing the edge beneath my words. It's not a big deal. She's just a friend." "I didn't say it was," I replied, smiling. Silence filled the kitchen after that. The kind of silence where words want to escape but stay trapped behind polite smiles. Later that night, I sat on the porch with Milo curled beside me. The sky was dark, and a soft drizzle began to fall. I watched the streetlights reflect on the wet road and thought about how love changes. How something that once felt safe can start to feel fragile without even breaking. I remembered the early days with Mark, how he used to leave notes on my windshield, how he once drove 3 hours just to bring me soup when I was sick. Now he barely noticed when I stayed quiet for hours. 2 days before Halloween, I ran into Lena at the grocery store. She was standing near the pumpkin display, looking effortlessly stylish, tall, blonde, wearing a soft beige sweater and a gold necklace that shimmered under the store lights. When she saw me, her eyes widened slightly. Then she smiled. "Emily, right? Mark's wife." "Yes," I said, forcing a polite smile. "It's nice to finally meet you." She laughed softly. "Oh, I've heard so much about you. Mark says you're the one who keeps the house full of warmth." Her tone was sweet, but there was something about the way she said full of warmth, like she was testing the temperature of the room. We chatted for a few minutes, small talk about decorations, party plans, and the neighborhood. But as she walked away, I noticed the way she touched her phone, smiling faintly. That night I asked Mark casually, "So, did you tell Lena what costume you're wearing?" He smiled, not looking up from his laptop. "Not yet. Thought I'd surprise everyone." "Everyone," I repeated softly. He didn't even notice the way my voice cracked just a little. By then I had made up my mind. If he wanted to invite his past, I'd let him, but I wouldn't sit quietly and watch. I would show him what it feels like to be seen again. So I called my friend Nora, who owned a small boutique downtown. "Nora," I said, "I need something unforgettable. Something that makes a statement." She chuckled. "What kind of statement, Em?" "The kind that reminds a man what he could lose," I replied quietly. We spent hours finding the right outfit. I chose a deep emerald gown with lace sleeves. Elegant, not revealing but strong. It wasn't a costume, it was armor. Something that said, "I'm still here. Don't forget who I am." The day before the party, I baked Mark's favorite pumpkin pie. I wanted everything to look normal. The house clean, the table perfect, the candles ready. If I was going to confront the truth, it wouldn't be in chaos. It would be in calm. That night, as we lay in bed, Mark reached for my hand. "I'm glad you're okay with this," he whispered. "It means a lot that you trust me." I turned to him, smiling faintly in the dark. "I do trust you, Mark," I said. "I just hope you trust me too." He didn't answer. He just squeezed my hand and drifted off to sleep. But I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of the rain tapping against the window. Halloween night was going to be unforgettable. For both of us. He just didn't know it yet. Halloween arrived with a chill in the air. That kind of October cold that makes the wind sound like whispers through the trees. The sun set early, and our porch glowed with flickering candles and the faint smell of roasted marshmallows from the neighbors. Inside, everything was ready. The dining table was set with black and gold plates, orange napkins folded neatly, and a centerpiece of small pumpkins and dried leaves. Soft jazz played from the speaker, blending with the gentle hum of conversation as guests began to arrive. Mark looked handsome, dressed as a 1920s gentleman in a brown vest, rolled sleeves, and suspenders. He gave me a quick smile as I walked down the stairs. For a moment he froze. "Wow," he said quietly. "You look incredible, Em." I smiled, holding his gaze. "Thank you." I was wearing the emerald gown Nora helped me pick, paired with a small black lace mask and simple pearl earrings. It wasn't flashy, but when I caught my reflection in the mirror, I saw someone calm, confident, and ready. Guests filled the room with laughter and chatter. The smell of cinnamon cider and pumpkin pie filled the air. I moved from one group to another, laughing softly, pretending everything was normal. But my heart raced every time someone new walked through the door. And then she arrived. Lena stepped in wearing a sleek black witch costume, elegant, not costume. Her long blonde hair fell perfectly over one shoulder, and her red lipstick gleamed under the soft light. Mark's face lit up the second he saw her. "Lena, you made it," he said, walking over to hug her. I watched quietly from across the room, my hands folded together. When they pulled apart, his eyes flicked to me, maybe expecting a reaction. But I just smiled and said, "Welcome, Lena. I'm glad you could come." Her eyes lingered on me, curious, maybe even cautious. "Thank you, Emily. Your home is beautiful." "Thank you," I said. Make yourself comfortable. Throughout the evening I played the perfect hostess, refilling drinks, passing around snacks, laughing at small jokes. But every now and then I'd catch Mark watching her. Not in a way that screamed romance, but in that quiet, familiar way that people look at something they once loved. At one point I found them standing together near the kitchen, laughing about some old memory. I walked over, setting down a plate of cookies. Sounds like you two have a lot of history, I said softly. Lena smiled. Oh, just old stories. Mark and I were practically kids back then. Funny how old stories find their way back, isn't it? I said with a calm smile. Her smile faltered just a little. Mark cleared his throat. Lena was just telling me about her new job at the hospital. Oh, that's wonderful, I said warmly. It must be nice having something steady again. There was a pause, brief but sharp. She nodded politely. It is. As the evening went on, the laughter faded into quiet background music. People started leaving one by one. By 10, only a few close friends remained, sipping coffee and chatting softly. Lena offered to help clean up. Mark, of course, said yes. I watched her carry plates into the kitchen, and for a moment, something inside me softened. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't trying to steal anything. She was just a memory. But Mark, he was the one who opened the door to that memory. When she walked back into the living room, she smiled at me. Emily, you've really made a beautiful home here. Thank you, Lena, I said, meeting her eyes. It took a lot of love. And a lot of lessons. Mark looked between us, uneasy. All right, I said gently. I think it's time for one last toast before the night ends. Everyone gathered near the table. I lifted my glass, steady hands, calm voice. To old friends, I said, smiling at Lena, and to remembering that the past has its place behind us. The room went quiet. For a second I thought maybe I'd said too much. But then Mark laughed softly, clinking his glass to mine. To the future, he said. When everyone left, including Lena, the house fell silent again. I started cleaning up, slowly stacking dishes. Mark followed me into the kitchen. You didn't have to make that toast, he said quietly. I know, I replied. But I wanted to. He sighed. You're upset. I turned to face him. No, Mark. I'm not upset. I'm tired. Tired of pretending everything's fine when it's not. He leaned against the counter, running a hand through his hair. She means nothing to me anymore, Em. You know that. Then why invite her? I asked softly. Why bring her into our home? He didn't answer right away. His shoulders sank. I guess. I wanted to prove to myself that I'd moved on. And did you? I asked. He looked at me, eyes full of regret. Yes. Because when I saw her tonight, all I could think about was how lucky I am that it's you standing next to me now. For a moment I wanted to believe him. Maybe I even did. But trust, once shaken, doesn't return easily. I hope that's true, I whispered. Because tonight, I remembered something too. What's that? He asked. That love isn't about proving anything. It's about protecting what you already have. He nodded slowly, tears forming in his eyes. We didn't argue. We didn't shout. We just stood there, two people who realized that even love can be fragile when you stop tending to it. Outside, the candles on the porch flickered one last time before going out. The morning after the party, I woke up early. The house was still. The faint smell of last night's candles and pumpkin pie hung in the air. Mark was still asleep beside me, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. For a few moments I just stared at the ceiling, my mind replaying every glance, every word, every smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I slipped out of bed, put on my robe and went downstairs. Milo followed quietly, his paws tapping softly on the wooden floor. The kitchen was a mess, half-empty glasses, crumbs on the table, a single gold earring left near the sink. Lena's, maybe. I picked it up, turning it over in my fingers. Tiny, delicate, and completely meaningless. And yet it felt like a symbol of everything that had been left behind, and everything I couldn't quite shake. I placed it in a drawer and made coffee. The first sip was bitter. When Mark came down an hour later, he looked tired. His hair was messy, his eyes softer than usual. Morning, he said quietly. Morning. He sat down across from me, waiting for me to speak first. I didn't. Finally, he sighed. I know last night wasn't easy, but I need you to believe me. I only wanted closure. Nothing more. I stirred my coffee slowly. You didn't need closure, Mark. You needed attention. There's a difference. He looked at me, pain flickering in his eyes. You think I don't see how distant we've been lately? How we barely talk anymore? I thought maybe if I showed you there was nothing left between me and her, things would feel normal again. I took a deep breath, letting his words sink in. Mark, love doesn't survive on tests. It survives on truth. He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. You're right. And the truth is, I've taken you for granted. The words landed softly but heavy. For the next few days, the house was quieter than usual. We spoke when necessary, small talk about groceries, work, and the weather. But underneath it all was a tenderness neither of us knew how to express. One evening, as the first snow of November dusted the backyard, I found Mark sitting on the porch with 2 mugs of cocoa. He motioned for me to join him. I've been thinking, he said, about us. Yeah. I don't want to lose what we have because I was too blind to see what mattered. I looked out at the snow, feeling the warmth of the mug against my hands. Then stop looking backward, I said quietly. Start showing me that you're here now. He nodded, his voice breaking a little. I will. We sat in silence, watching the snow fall over the empty yard. No more words were needed. Sometimes silence speaks louder than anything else. Over the next few weeks, something shifted between us. It wasn't sudden or dramatic. It was slow, careful, like the way spring returns after a long winter. Mark started cooking dinner again, leaving little notes on the fridge. Have a good day, Em. We began taking long walks with Milo after dinner, just like we used to. And one evening, he brought home a small box wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a framed photo, a picture of us from our first Halloween together. I thought maybe we could hang it in the living room, he said softly, right where everyone can see it. I smiled, running my thumb along the edge of the frame. I'd like that. We hung it near the fireplace that night. The photo showed us laughing, me in that ridiculous detective hat, him with fake mustache paint on his cheek. We looked so young, so unafraid. That's when I realized something. Love doesn't end with betrayal or mistakes. It ends when you stop trying to understand each other. Mark and I had both made mistakes. His was inviting the past into our present. Mine was letting silence take over instead of speaking when it mattered. But that Halloween, the night I thought would break us, instead became the moment we started to rebuild. Weeks later, I ran into Lena again at the farmer's market. She looked surprised to see me. Emily, she said, smiling politely. How are you? I'm good, I said genuinely this time. And you? She nodded. Doing well. I wanted to thank you again for that night. It meant a lot. I smiled. Sometimes closure comes in ways we don't expect. She nodded, understanding the unspoken message. Take care, Emily. You too, Lena. As I walked away, the cold air brushed against my face, and for the first time in a long while I felt light. That night, Mark and I had dinner by candlelight. No occasion. No guests. Just us. He looked at me over the table, smiling in that quiet way that says everything without words. I'm glad you stayed, he said softly. I'm glad you noticed, I replied. We both laughed. Not the forced kind from before, but something real, easy, warm. And as I blew out the candles before bed, I realized that sometimes love doesn't need grand gestures or perfect apologies. It just needs 2 people willing to face the uncomfortable truth and still choose each other afterward. It's been almost a year since that Halloween night. The photo still hangs above our fireplace, the one from our very first costume party. Every time I walk past it, I'm reminded not of pain or betrayal, but of the fragile beauty of love, and how easily it can be bruised if we forget to care for it. Mark and I still have quiet days, of course. We still get lost in our routines, and sometimes the dishes pile up, or we argue about who forgot to buy milk. But now, when silence creeps in, we notice it. We talk sooner. We forgive faster. We don't let the small things grow into walls between us anymore. Sometimes, when we sit on the porch watching the sunset, he'll reach over, take my hand and say softly, I'm sorry for that night. And I'll smile and reply, I know. And I'm grateful for what it taught us. Because it did teach us something. It taught us that trust isn't built on promises. It's built on presence. That love doesn't fade when tested. It deepens when chosen again and again and again. That night I thought I'd lose my husband, I actually found him again. Not the man he used to be, but the man who finally learned to see me, to listen, and to stay. And if I've learned one thing from it all, it's this. Sometimes the scariest nights, even a Halloween night full of ghosts from the past, can turn into the moment you realize what home really means. Home isn't a place. It's a person who still chooses you when the lights go out,